There are countless names that echo through the halls of sports history. From Michael Jordan to Serena Williams, from Muhammad Ali to Lionel Messi, we all know the legends who are celebrated as the very best. But behind those iconic names, there are athletes who never quite got the recognition they deserved. And today, I want to tell you the story of one of the most underrated athletes of all time. When we talk about greatness, most people think about championships, medals, records, and fame. But greatness isn't always about how many trophies you lift or how many magazine covers you land on. Sometimes, greatness is about resilience, consistency, and doing extraordinary things while the world barely notices. And that is exactly what makes this athlete's story so powerful. Imagine dedicating your entire life to a sport, training every single day, pushing your body beyond its limits, sacrificing time with family, and constantly battling against the very best in the world. Now imagine doing all of that and still not being seen as a superstar, still not being treated as a legend despite having a resume that would put most athletes to shame. That's the reality of this underrated icon. The athlete I'm talking about is not someone who craves the spotlight. They never needed the flashy headlines or the constant media attention. Instead, they let their performance speak for itself. And yet, despite everything they achieved, history hasn't celebrated them in the way it should. Part of the reason comes down to timing. In every sport, there are eras dominated by one or two big names, the media darlings who attract all the attention. And when you're competing at the same time as those megastars, your accomplishments often get overshadowed, no matter how impressive they are. But what if I told you this athlete went head-to-head with some of the biggest names in their sport and often outperformed them? What if I told you they set records that remain untouched to this day? What if I told you they carried their team, their country, or even their entire sport on their shoulders, only to be forgotten when the lights dimmed? It's easy to cheer for the obvious legends, but it takes a true fan to recognize the quiet greatness of someone who never got their flowers. And that's why today, I want to shine a light where it truly belongs. This athlete's journey began in humble surroundings. There were no golden pathways laid out for them, no instant fame, no million-dollar endorsements waiting. They had to fight their way up, step by step, often being doubted, overlooked, or underestimated. But that's what shaped their mentality, the hunger to prove everyone wrong. From a young age, they showed flashes of brilliance. Coaches noticed something different about them, not just skill, but discipline. Not just talent, but heart. And while others relied on natural gifts, this athlete built themselves brick by brick, through sweat and persistence. By the time they reached the professional stage, the world didn't quite know what was coming. Slowly but surely, they began stacking up performances that left fans stunned. They delivered when it mattered most, clutch performances, game-saving moments, and career-defining highlights. And yet, with every win, every achievement, the spotlight always seemed to shift elsewhere. Another star would get the front-page story. Another headline would bury their accomplishments. Another awards ceremony would somehow overlook them. But here's the thing, true greatness doesn't need validation. True greatness is undeniable, and this athlete's career stands as proof of that. They broke records that most athletes can only dream of. They displayed versatility, adapting to different challenges and proving that they weren't just a one-dimensional player. Whether it was offense, defense, endurance, or mental toughness, they excelled in every category. Even more remarkable was their longevity. While many athletes peak for a few years and then fade away, this individual maintained excellence over a decade or more. Season after season, they kept showing up, putting in the work, and delivering results. Fans who truly followed the sport knew their worth. To them, this athlete wasn't just underrated, they were a hidden legend. Someone you respected deeply, even if the mainstream media refused to put them on a pedestal. What makes the story even more inspiring is the humility they carried. No scandals, no controversies, no ego battles. Just pure dedication to the game. They showed younger generations what it meant to love the sport for the sport itself. But let's not pretend the lack of recognition didn't sting. Imagine giving your absolute best, competing at the highest level, and still not being mentioned among the all-time greats. It's heartbreaking, and yet, they never let that frustration derail them. Instead, they kept going. Every time they were overlooked, they used it as fuel. Every time someone said they weren't elite, they proved otherwise. Every time the spotlight passed them by, they reminded us that the shadows are sometimes where true greatness hides. There's a certain beauty in being underrated. It gives you freedom. It forces you to play without expectation. And in many ways, it allows your legacy to be appreciated later, when people finally take the time to look back and realize what they missed. And that's exactly what's happening now. Fans, historians, and analysts are beginning to re-evaluate this athlete's career. They're starting to piece together the highlights, the stats, and the sheer consistency, and the picture that emerges is undeniable. This was one of the greatest of all time. It's a lesson for all of us. Recognition isn't always immediate. Sometimes, history takes time to catch up. Sometimes, legends are only truly understood years after they've retired. But here's what we should never forget: greatness isn't defined by headlines. It isn't defined by how many commercials you star in or how many followers you have on social media. Greatness is defined by impact, by consistency, by showing up day after day and delivering. This athlete embodied all of that. They weren't just good, they were extraordinary. They weren't just talented, they were relentless. They weren't just another player in the game, they were the standard that others quietly measured themselves against. And if you've ever felt underrated in your own life, if you've ever worked hard without getting the recognition you deserve, then you understand what this athlete went through. Their story is bigger than sports. It's about perseverance, humility, and the courage to keep going even when the world isn't watching. When we look back at their career, the evidence is overwhelming. Multiple records, countless unforgettable moments, a legacy that continues to inspire even without the glitz and glamour of superstardom. It's easy to celebrate the obvious legends. But today, we honor the overlooked one. The one who carried greatness with quiet dignity. The one who proved that you don't need the loudest applause to make the biggest impact. This is the story of the most underrated athlete of all time, a story of resilience, of passion, and of undeniable greatness that history will one day finally give its rightful place. So, the next time you hear people arguing about the GOAT, the greatest of all time, remember that sometimes, the truest greatness doesn't live under the brightest spotlight. Sometimes, it lives in the shadows, waiting for us to recognize it. Because in the end, legends aren't always born in the spotlight. Sometimes, legends are forged in silence. And this athlete, they are the perfect example of that truth.